Welcome all to another episode of TurinGiants presents The Scoop, the program where nothing is made up and the information really does matter. My name is Zach, and as always, I'm joined by Frederic, from whom we get our inside Juventus transfer information. Frederic, how are you?
Good evening, man. I'm fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I realize it's been almost a month since we've played the drop, so I think we should just front load it this episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll give my go ahead this time, man.
All right.
And now, Freddy Scoops with the scoop. He's the best in the business, see? Yeah.
Always enjoyable, and I think it's particularly timely. We're going to demo for y'all a couple new segments that are going to periodically pop up on the scoop, and we're really excited to share those with you. They are hopefully extremely informative. I mean, they're certainly the type of content that I would like to see when we're talking about transfers. So please, or as you watch and reflect, let us know what you think of it in the comments. We do read those and we do appreciate that as well. Speaking of comments, we really love all the messages we get on Instagram. We're still lagging a little bit in the YouTube follows. So please, if you enjoy our content, I ask that you give us a follow or subscribe on YouTube. That means a lot for the Turn Giants team as a whole as we move forward. So please do that. But without much further ado, I think let's jump into what people really want to hear, and that is what updated information we have with regards to summer transfer activity. And today, we are only looking at potential departures. We want to demo these other segments. And so we're going to just take a look at 7 players currently on Juventus's roster that we did not touch on during Tuesday's episode. And so Frederic's going to walk us through the 7 on our screen and to kind of see where we stand on those before we get into these new segments. So the first name on our list is our goalkeeper. He's popped in and out of our scoop episodes. Where do we stand on today on Michele Di Gregorio?
At this point, his potential departure seems a bit unlikely. Why is that? Because Michele Di Gregorio himself declined an offer from a Premier League club, which I don't know which one, but he declined it, stating it that he's happy at this point with Juventus, has no intention of leaving. I feel though that might change if a more prestigious club comes a knocking. But as it stands today, the odds of him leaving in this window are slim.
Next player on our list is one who we've reported a lot on, Lloyd Kelly. And his temperature has gone all sorts of directions from hot to cold. I think there's a lot of complications, right, with regards to him being a newly joined player, one that maybe Kamoli's not super, hot on himself. So where do we stand today on Lloyd Kelly?
Well, it's basically the same story as with Michele Di Gregorio, other than the fact that our good friend Lloyd Kelly has next to no offers,
Okay.
which is the main reason because he is on a unofficial transfer list, but we don't have any teams that are prepared to pay us what we want. We had, if I'm not mistaken, let me quickly check in my notes. We had 2 offers from teams that wanted to loan him with no obligation to buy, but of course, given the fact that we're very thin defensive wise, that wouldn't be a solid option for Juventus. So that's why at this point, Lloyd Kelly leaving seems unlikely, but it could quickly change. All it takes is one offer, and let's pray to sweet baby Jesus that that happens.
Well, let's go from one center back to another. Rugani.
Yes, Rugani has quite an amount of offers, but Tudor's word here is of high importance because Tudor says that he wants to test out Rugani because he thinks he's a valid alternative for the center back position, which I personally agree on. Also, the fact that he doesn't have a high wage bill and he's already the property of Juventus makes for a quick sum of all positive features. So it could well change because or Juventus rather, have seen an increased interest in Rugani from also from teams abroad. So you never know, given his personal situation. I don't know if people noticed, but he's recently divorced his wife. Um, his wife was always the main reason why he preferred to stay in Italy, given the fact that he's now rolling solo. Maybe that could change if a club with the right offer comes knocking at the gates of Continassa. So we'll see what happens. But for now, it's room temperature, and Tudor's wants to test him.
So going from a player recently divorced to, if I'm not mistaken, a player recently engaged.
Yes,
Mbangula.
Auguri Mbangula Samuel. Congrats. Yes, he's gotten engaged, but I'm not sure if the wedding will take place in Turin.
By the way, that
Um,
was unintentionally like the best segue I've ever done. So I just
kudos, kudos.
gotta
Well,
pat my own back on that one.
I,
I'm going.
I gave you
Go
the
ahead.
I gave you the layup for the alley oop, man.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
okay.
was a joint team effort,
I
but it
die.
was a good one.
I digress to pat my own back. Let's get back to the program. Why might the wedding not be in Turin?
Well, there's a lot of interest for Magula as well, and as we know and we saw in our last season, he's not in high regards. Or he's not held in high regards by our coach.
Hmm.
So he's pretty much disposable. He already reached a verbal agreement with Werder Bremen, if I'm not mistaken. But there's no agreement yet between Werder Bremen and Juventus. And alongside Werder Bremen, I think there are like 7 or 8 teams that are very interested in acquiring Samuel in their ranks. So logic tells me that is something that's bound to happen within this transfer window, that he's going to pack his bags and move out of Turin.
It is sad because he showed really good promise, but like you said, it doesn't seem like he has a spot on Tudor's team. So hopefully, if he is destined for a wedding elsewhere, that Kamoli can do a good job of selling him for good value and not just pennies on the dollar. Next player, Douglas Luiz. Is he going to help bolster our midfield and get some playing time this year?
Sadly, no. Sadly, no. Juventus are desperate to offload him. Also, given the fact that there have been some talks where he expressed his well his I'm not gonna say misery because that sounds overly dramatic.
Displeasure?
Displeasure is a nice, yeah, that's a nice synonym. But yeah, he's not happy. I don't think that he's the type of player that Tudor wants at this point. I think it could be of an added value, but we have some teams interested. We have Everton in Pole, and Everton made a formal bid today, if I'm not mistaken, for 30 million euros to buy Douglas Luiz. Juventus declined that offer.
Yeah, that doesn't that we don't that does not that's not even a a balanced offer, so we have to
No,
reject that.
no. We rejected that, but my source tells me that Everton will come in hot, and that Douglas Luiz at this point is their number one transfer target, their priority. So I wouldn't be surprised if something Friday, Saturday, maybe Monday will happen, and we get another official bid in. I'm not sure what his stance is on that transfer or that team,
Mhm.
but I'm fairly sure that Juventus and him decided commonly that it's best to part ways.
All right, 2 more names on our list. The next name is Weston McKennie, obviously going through the annual 1 year left on his contract. Looks like he's on his way out, but might be still in. Where do we really stand on Weston McKennie?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you because the temperature I gave is a sort of a mix of my personal feelings and the info that I gathered, and I think he's about to leave. But when I asked my source directly, he gave me like the I don't know emoji, meaning that he really doesn't know. And I think that Juventus or the management doesn't know themselves what to do, because if you depend on a player, if you have trust in a player, you would have renewed his contract. I feel. But there have been zero talk about a contract renewal. Literally zero.
But
There's not.
wasn't there a conversation a while ago? Not terribly long ago, but in the spring, and they stalled because he wanted just an amount of money that
six
the management
six million.
wasn't willing to
Yep.
pay. So
that was the communication from his management side. That would be, a pillar of the negotiations. I think Juve laughed out loud a bit and stopped all communication henceforth. So what I'm thinking, and my personal opinion, is that Juve is holding out for an offer of a club like late August. Oh, we need a midfielder. We got McKennie should be of interest to us, because then you have some leverage. At this point, we don't have any leverage, so I think Juventus chose to wipe it under the rug kind of thing and wait for things to spawn or to rekindle a bit at the ending period of the transfer window.
doesn't seem like there's a lot of teams interested in him, though. Is it possible that they're just kind of waiting to get him on a free? Because you'd think that an individual with his skill set would have suitors in the top leagues.
I think his main problem is his salary. I think that's the issue. I think he didn't ask for 6 million because he plays at Juventus. I think he'd have 6 million to go play at Olympique de Marseille or Werder Bremen too. And I think
Mm.
that's an issue because I think McKennie knows that he's not the type of player that'll have a career until he's in the fall of his 30s. I could see a player like McKennie retiring very soonly. And I think he knows that it's my time to get the bag,
Hmm.
so to speak. So I think that's one thing that's holding up his suitors, as well as the fact that um, he's a good all-round player, but he's not a specific kind of player that you need to fill a certain gap in your team with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he's not a specialist. We've described
no,
him a lot as a jack of all trades or a Swiss Army knife, and those guys just aren't tend not to be specialists, and so it's harder to see how they might fit in if you're looking for a specific characteristic or profile,
yeah,
right?
very true.
Alrighty, let's go to the last name on our list. Last time we touched on Fabio Moretti on Tuesday, I should say, a player who hasn't played much with us, was on loan. Now we're talking Facundo Gonzalez, a player who's never played for us in a meaningful game, who was out on loan last year. Is it likely? He's a left-footed center back. Is it likely that we see him play for Juventus this year?
Very unlikely. Why is that? Because he has a lot of suitors. Also within Italy.
Hmm.
However, Juventus may, and I say this with high caution, may build in a sort of buyback clause because Juventus are still, they believe in him. They still think that he has something that he needs to develop and could make him potentially a great defender. And that's where the last meeting with Lazio fell through at this point because Lazio were very interested. Juventus insisted on a buyback clause. Lazio weren't that happy on it because, if I might recall, Lazio will have to pay us in this transfer window 24 million euros because they loaned some players of us who became definite players like Rovella.
Hmm.
They try to incorporate that thing into a possible Facundo Gonzalez transfer. Juventus didn't appreciate that. So it was a bit of bad blood that's been set, but he has tons of teams after him. But he's also not the type of player that's going to balance our books out with a transfer fee. So let's not get all too giddy about maybe making a lot of money by selling him because, as you said, he never played a meaningful game for us, and he's not the type of spotlight player that can bring in a lot of money, unfortunately.
Well, that does bring us to the end of the sort of usual Scoop program. We are going to transition into two new segments that we're going to provide y'all today. The first is called Tracking a Transfer. This is where we detail the journey a player took to Juventus through the lens of Scoop content. Now, obviously, only one player has signed so far, Jonathan David, earlier this month, a player that we've been tracking as part of this program since the beginning. And so if you are not watching this on YouTube or Spotify video, we have a graph on the screen that tracks Jonathan David's temperatures, starting in the first episode where we covered him back on June 2nd to the last episode before he officially joined, that last episode on June 25th. And you'll see or you'll hear that he started off hot at the very beginning, was ice cold for a while in the middle of the month before rising back to hot at the end of the month before his inevitable signing. And so, what this segment will do is really kind of revisit why we see these stark changes in temperatures from the beginning of talking to with him and his entourage to his ultimate signing. And we're going to have Frederic actually talk us through the main sort of reasons for this sort of valley before the eventual peak. So, Frederic, why don't you talk us through from the beginning, starting in June 2nd to when we signed
Yeah.
him, of what happened with Jonathan David.
Well, in the beginning of June, and I like to recall people that Jonathan David was a Juntuli name at first. There were contacts made with him when Juntuli was still within our ranks. But in the beginning of June, we basically agreed our terms with him personally. It was all done. He was very happy to join Juventus. I think I mentioned that too, like in our first episode. Um, and then all of a sudden, what happened? Well, we had other strikers that became available. We had alternatives. We had our good friend Vlahovic, who made it clear that he wasn't going to extend his contract on the diluted payments. So that made Juventus look elsewhere and maybe find a better deal. Of course, that didn't happen. Our good friend Kamoli came into play. And that's the pivot point of the whole transfer was that his agents asked for a ridiculous fee. At that point, Kamoli, given the fact that he investigated the things that Juntuli had done and agreed upon, was infuriated, logically, I might add, and basically told him to sod off. After a while, with the lack of interest from other top teams, Jonathan David himself insisted to bring up negotiations with Juventus again because he had his mind set on joining our squad, um, which resulted to his agents reducing their demands. I don't know what fiscal construction they use to do that because I'm pretty sure that it's going to be something that's going to come out of Jonathan David's pockets eventually, but that's another story. And that basically, well, marked the path for signing him. Also due to the fact that the alternatives that we had were way too expensive, wage-wise and transfer-wise, and we still reached a verbal agreement with him. But also internally, Kamoli, I think it's the only name that Kamoli has followed up upon that has been handed over from Juntali to him, where he shares Juntali's opinion that he could be a valuable striker for Juventus in the future. So it's a mix of those things coming along and a very well laid out timeline. Zach, kudos to you for creating this because it's really nice to see the whole episode or the whole Jonathan David saga flowing about in a graph. So those are basically the typical points that led to us signing him eventually.
I think this is fascinating to me, and I like kind of mapping it out in this manner because with all the noise and the rumors and the disparate tweets that you have to kind of wade through, just kind of putting it all down on paper was really helpful to me to kind of see how it flows. And it's kind of funny to say, but our program has really helped me sort of wade through the noise in terms of kind of understanding the journey there. And we've got several players, Chico Conceição being the most notable, that we expect to join in the very near future, or at least be officially announced. And we plan to map these out to you as well, because some, like Jonathan, doesn't just have one pivot point. Chico's has kind of gone back and forth for a while now. If Sancho ends up joining, the same. So this is
Yeah.
something that we plan to provide you. If you enjoy this, if you think this is cool, please let us know in the comments, or shoot a message to TurinGiants. Because we want to provide value, right, to our listeners. If this is something you
Yeah,
think is cool,
yeah.
let us know. We'll keep doing it.
And
The s-
also,
Go ahead.
sorry, to give a little bit of insight, because people usually think because we are overwhelmed, especially in this period with tweets and people in the know, and I always get the feeling that the general public is being held this portrait of team A, team B, and a player in the middle, and that's it. The three of you work it out, and it doesn't happen like that. I mean, those negotiations, I've followed a couple of them live. They are exhausting. You have to take into account um, signing bonuses, add-ons, playing bonuses, trophy bonuses, goal scoring bonuses, percentages for the manager, percentages for the representatives, shirt deals. You have to take into consideration even the will of a player's family, which is like a player might say, "Hey, I want to join Juventus. It's awesome, an awesome team," and his wife might go, "I don't want to go to Turin. I want to live in Getafe or whatever because the climate is a lot warmer there." So it switch like from 1 minute to another. There are so many variables in this whole equation that it's basically madness. It's utter madness.
But it's also exciting as somebody who's just able to try to observe it on the as sort of a spectator. It's exciting when you can kind of condense it into, I think, manageable bite-sized pieces, and that's what our attempt is here today. Let's move to the next segment in the interest of time.
Yeah.
The next segment that we're going to periodically be rolling out is called Looking Ahead. And this is where we kind of take a holistic view of Juventus's roster in light of potential moves to comment on how competitive we think it is, as well as identify strengths and weaknesses. So what you have on the screen for those who can't see it is sort of a depth chart by position in Tudor's 3-4-2-1 of what our team looks like, taking into account likely departures. Nico, McKennie, Douglas Luiz, Weah, Kostic, Mbangula, Adzic, Rugani, Rui. Those guys aren't in the picture. What does our team look like? So I'll just quickly rattle it off for the listener only, folks, and then we'll kind of pass it over to Frederic to kind of see what his initial thoughts are at looking at this squad. So for striker position, we have Jonathan David, Vlahovic, and Milik. In the attacking midfielder position, we have Yildiz, Jadon Sancho, Chico Conceição. The fourth, the Yildiz backup still not determined. In the center midfield position, we have Thuram, Locatelli, Koopmeiners, and again, sort of an unknown fourth midfielder. Left wing back, Cambiaso, Diego Moreira to compete with him, who we reported on Tuesday, the left wing back for Strasbourg. On the right, we've got Alberto Costa backing up Arnau Martinez, a new name for y'all that Frederic, I'm sure, will provide a little bit of insight on, but he's been linked with us, a right wing back from Girona. And then in the center back position, you have our Bremer, Kalulu, Savona, Gotti, Cabal, Kelly, Leone, we've included in there. And then at the keeper position, we've removed Perrin and replaced with Audero, one of several names who have been linked should Perrin leave our club. So that's the quickly rattling off the positions for those watching. I apologize. Frederic, taking a step back, looking at this roster, okay, what are your feelings? Is this competitive? Is this a Serie A type winning team? And what is the area that most concerns you?
Well, in my opinion, it isn't because my biggest concern at this point, if I just look at the layout, is still the defense because we don't know how Cabal and Bremer will return or when they will return. So, that leaves me with a nasty feeling also, taking into account the last games that we played. And you see that we have a lot of a couple of question marks, meaning that we lack a bit of depth. I think you would agree with me on that, Zach. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That second point you made is really what I wanted to focus in on. Is we talked about it a lot last year that we just didn't have anybody who could come off the bench or rotationally move into the starting lineup that was competitive. If Thuram and Locatelli weren't available, it was a drastic drop off, and that is what we see with our roster right now. It's very thin. I mean, when you talk about all the names that I listed of potential departures, that's upwards of 10 players. Three of whom at least three of whom who just joined us within the last year.
Yep.
And so something's got to happen. And for us to have a competitive team, we have to have depth. Inter showed that they didn't win the Scudetto, but week in, week out, they could provide competitive teams. And it's that just resilience and that consistency of competitiveness that enabled them to get to the finals of the Champions League. We don't have that right now in what we're looking at. We need depth pieces, or we need people to stay. Someone like McKennie, someone who can play all those positions, who can stay, be competitive, and not have a notable drop off when we sub him into a game, whether it be in the dying minutes or if somebody needs a rest. And so that's
Yeah.
the first thing that that jumped out to me as a point of concern. Can you well, two things. Can you speak to us a bit on this inclusion of Arnau Martinez, like I said, the right wing back from Girona? And then secondarily, do you have any insight from your contacts on these question marks? Okay, we got question marks in the midfield, we got question marks in attacking mid. Can you speak to whether you have any insight of what that might look like, or when we might be hearing something with regards to those positions?
Of course. Well, first bouncing back off of Martinez, I had no idea who he was. I'm going to be very honest with you guys. So I had to look him up, and I asked a couple of people in the know, like, what type of player is he? And he could be an added value to this Juventus. Also because of the fact that, like we said, the depth that we're lacking. He could be somebody you could alternate with Costa, because he has the same playing style. He's also very offensive minded, but he's also very good in one-to-one um, duels, aerial duels. So he has like how should I put it? He ticks the boxes that Tudor needs and what this team desperately needs. Like he's very flexible. He's also very fairly young still. Um, I'd say like he's a duplicate of Costa in terms of playing style. So I think it's a logical move to make, because you can switch out players with a completely different playing style in the same position, in my opinion. You need players that can offer the same range, the same physicality that you need in order for your team to, provide a bit more depth in the last three quarters of the pitch. So I can get behind that potential transfer. And with regards to your second question, I texted
Mhm.
my source about that too, because I said, "What's Kamoli doing? I mean, is he sleeping? I mean, July's almost finished. We haven't done anything noteworthy, and we need some depth. We need something." And there were two things that he mentioned. He said, "Well, since Kamoli joined our ranks, it's been very quiet, and quiet in the sense of before he had there was a lot of talk within La Continenza. If you had the right sources, the right people, and you could basically gather a lot of intel on that. It's more closed down now. It's more internally discussed and not widely spread. So that's a good thing, I think, personally. And the second thing is that he expects, because he knows Komoli, or the way that he works, he expects an avalanche. Like he says, in my opinion, Komoli is working below the radar, and he'll surprise us, in the beginning of August with a few transfers that we might not have seen coming.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping a bit for that. I'm hoping that the transfer that he will make, that there'll be good ones that'll provide us not only depth but also some creativity, some danger, and some balance, because our Juventus squad last season was terribly unbalanced. I think we can all agree on that. So let's see what the month of August will bring. I hope my source is right with his gut feeling.
Well, we still have almost roughly half of July. And in the world of football, we know that things can happen very quickly. And that's why we're here. We're here to do our best to keep you up to date with what's really happening behind the scenes here, give you not just a tweet worth of content, but some context as well. If you liked the new segments, please comment on the YouTube. Please subscribe as well, or send us a message on Instagram. Let us know if we should keep doing it or whether it missed the mark. Um, but that, I think we've touched on everything, Frederick. What do you say? We sign off for today.
I think we discussed everything we needed to discuss. So yeah,
Well, thank you, Frederic. Thank you to all of our listeners. It's for you that we do this. And as always, until next time, Forza Juve.